I'd be remiss if I didn't start off with my favorite story. You know, as a Chabad rabbi, we are teaching a message of Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, serve God with joy. When I asked a fellow Jew here from Richmond, Virginia, yes, you know him, I asked him if he's ever heard of Chabad before. He says, yeah, Chabad is the happy Jews. I said, yeah, you got the right idea. That's right. That's good. Better than I could have said it. So, we teach a message of happiness and joy. There was a fellow here in the community, came over to me one day and he says, Rabbi, I've got a bone to pick with you. I'm very upset with you. I said, why? What's the problem? He says, because you're always telling us to be joyous. That you're supposed to serve God with joy and you're supposed to be happy. But Rabbi, I don't want to be happy. I like to be miserable. So I looked at him and I said, that's okay. You could be miserable if that's what makes you happy. So, this course, from Worrier to Worrier, is personally very exciting for me to teach because it's based upon the foundational text of all of Chabad Lubavitch philosophy. Anybody know the difference between Chabad and Lubavitch, by the way? Chabad and Lubavitch. Lubavitch is not a city, it's a shtetl. It's a little town, a little hamlet. Lubavitch is a little town in Belarusia. Luba means love. And vich is just a suffix. So Lubavitch means the lovers. The town of lovers. That's what it is, the town of love. Chabad is an intellectual approach to faith. You must have heard this from me many times. It's an acronym, Chochmah Bina Da'at, which means idea, understanding, and meditation. It's about taking an idea, turning it into understanding, and finally meditating upon it until you feel it. You don't want to understand what you learn, you want to feel what you learn. You want to turn that intellect into love, into emotion. So Chabad Lubavitch's fundamental text is the book of Tanya. It was written by the first Chabad Rabbi, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi. And as we'll be introducing the book of Tanya in a few minutes, you'll realize how this book shaped not just a generation, it shaped an era. The last era of exile, the last era of living in the spiritual exile until the arrival of Mashiach. The Jewish leaders at the time said that with this book, this was published 250 years ago, with this book we will welcome the Mashiach. We'll be using and reading and living with this book until the coming of the Mashiach in the times of darkness that we live in right now. And I say darkness, I mean spiritual darkness. A time when we grow up in the darkness, we don't have miracles and we don't have great leaders and we don't have... It's difficult to see good from bad and right from wrong and up from down, and we're struggling with all sorts of inner emotions. It's this book of Tanya that serves as a light in the darkness, a lighthouse on the harbor to guide us towards happiness, towards love, away from darkness, away from depression, away from sadness, away from feeling miserable, towards joy, lightness, happiness, gladness of heart. Hence the subtitle, Jewish Secrets. It's a feeling good. The objective of this course is after 6 weeks, hopefully,
everybody be happy.
Everyone's going to be jumping for joy. The goal of the course is that you should feel not just better. You shouldn't just be feeling good after the course, but that you should have the tools to be able to guide your frame of mind. Instead of living a life which is reactive, allowing us to be proactive, to decide how we want to feel instead of just depending on when we stubbed our toe. The saying goes that we can't control the wind, but you can adjust the sails. This course is not going to take away all the harsh realities of life. That would be an amazing course if you could do that one. The harsh realities of life are the harsh realities of life. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. And wouldn't it be lovely to always have the right response? That's what this course is about. I'm going to break it down for you here on the screen with what we're trying to achieve in the next 6 sessions, including tonight. So tonight, we're going to address the topic of authenticity, what's known as the Imposter Syndrome. Next week, shame and inadequacy. You ever felt inadequate? Guilt and remorse. This one's ingrained in us. You know the story of the Jewish mother, she just moved to Florida. She's telling her son in New Jersey how to come visit her. You know, when you land at the airport, take a taxi, you come to the... she's already laughing. You take a taxi, it's a true story. You take a taxi, you come to the building, this is the address, and with your elbow you push the button on the wall. I'll let you in. Then you come to the front door with your elbow, you push another button, and then you come inside the elevator with your elbow, you push up, you come to the 4th floor with your elbow, you push the button, I'll let you in. Mom, sounds good, but what's with the elbow? You mean you're not going to be bringing something? Right? So that's the guilt and remorse. This one's built into our psyche. Lesson 4 is going to be a little difficult. We saved it for 4. Soften it up a little bit. This one's about tragedy, pain, crisis, hardship. Lesson 5, happiness and positive emotions. And lesson 6 is we're going to wrap it all up together in our relationships, satisfying relationships. But before we get into this, let's start right away with making an assessment exercise. Are you ready? How happy are you? How happy are you? Anybody here feel and consider themselves a very happy person?
Scale of what?
Alicia, Dean, okay. Anybody here miserable? Would you consider yourself a negative person? All right, maybe. Let's take a look. Please take a look in the textbooks over here. On page 1. Sorry, it's page 2. Please turn to page 2 to exercise 1.1 and please answer the question. Indicate the extent to which you've experienced each of the following feelings during the past week. 1 is very slightly or not at all. On all the way up to 5, which is extremely. So just put a number, put a score for how you felt about these emotions over the past 7 days. The answers will not be published anywhere. Very private, only you. Just how you felt the past week. It is the past week. Okay, how are we doing over here? So far, so good? Nobody's going to see these answers. Very private, just for you. It's 20 questions. Okay, if you finished your questions, you can add up your scores at the bottom. It tells you how to add up your scores based on 10 numbers. You'll need a little math. You might need to use your calculator here. Okay, how are we doing over there? We got math? You need an accountant? Good? Okay, so if everybody can work out your scores, it's private. Please do not share your score with anybody else. Are we good? Still working on it. Okay. I think it's the automatic -5 there, Corey. Okay. 30 seconds.
No.
You can do this.
So, no, this really isn't indicative of me. So I had cataract surgery this week.
Okay, it's for the past week. Just the past week.
I know, I was a nervous wreck.
Just the past week.
I'm not normally.
Okay. All right, folks. If you haven't finished it yet, you can finish it later. So let me tell you, hopefully by now you've worked out your score. You have a positive effect score and you have a negative effect score. The answer should be somewhere between 10 and 50 for both of those numbers. If you didn't get between 10 and 50, you need to go back to preschool. Elementary school, sorry. Okay, hopefully you go between 10 and 50. Now, for the positive side, if your answer, and again, this is very private, it's only for you to look at. Nobody else needs to look. If your answer is 33.3 or higher, then you have higher levels of positive emotion. If your answer for the positive effect score is higher than 33.3, then you have higher levels of positive emotion. And now the negative score, the negative effect score, if your negative effect was 17.4 or higher, 17.4 or higher, then you are experiencing higher levels of negative emotion. And that's according to the scientific study called the PANAS scales. PANAS, P-A-N-A-S. So you can get a feel, a read for where you're starting off this course. There's no right or wrong. It's just the way you are. It's you. It's just me. It's you. It's how we start off, where we are right now. And if you showed up here tonight, it means that you're trying, you're committed to becoming a happier person, a person with better emotion, healthier emotion, and God willing, we're going to be able to do this journey successfully together. But don't feel bad at whatever score you may have received, because it's just indicative of who you are. And as human beings, we are naturally flawed. None of us are perfect. Just the name of the game. There's a beautiful letter in which the Rebbe writes to someone. He compares Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden to a Holocaust victim, an inmate in Auschwitz. Take a look at this beautiful letter on page 3. In our world, everything is a mixture of good and bad. Human beings must choose which aspects they will emphasize, contemplate, and pursue. For in each person's life, there are 2 possible approaches: to see the good that surrounds us, or the opposite. It is instructive that our sages tell us that Adam was an ingrate. We just read about him in the Torah. Adam was ungrateful. Why? Even before he was banished from the Garden of Eden, where he lived in a literal paradise, he complained about his circumstances. When God asked him why he ate from the tree of knowledge, you know what he said? It was her fault. The woman that you put here with me, it was her fault, right? So Adam was ungrateful. Conversely, so the guy is literally in paradise. And he found a reason to kvetch. Conversely, there were Jewish men and women who thanked and blessed the Creator and recited morning blessings while living through the most horrifying times in the German concentration camps. Ultimately, each individual's circumstances will lie somewhere between these 2 extremes. You're going to be somewhere between hell and paradise, hell and heaven, right? Garden of Eden and Auschwitz. Needless to say, my intention is not to imply that anyone deserves suffering, God forbid. My point is simply to underscore the reality. The type of lives that we live, whether full of satisfaction and meaning or the opposite, depends in large measure on our choice, which dictates whether we will focus on the positive or on the negative. And that's what this course is setting out to improve. You are not a victim of circumstance. When Jonathan Sachs former chief rabbi of England, was once in a private audience of the Rebbe. He started off a sentence by saying, "The circumstances in which I find myself are," and the Rebbe cut him off and said, "A Jew never finds himself in circumstances. It's your choice how you're going to deal with them." And we absolutely have a choice how we're going to deal with the cards that we've been dealt. We can go positive, like the Holocaust inmate. We can go negative, like the Garden of Eden, like Adam in the Garden of Eden. You can have the best cards, best deck of cards and be ungrateful. You can have the worst deck of cards and be positive and uplifted. And that all is a matter of your perspective. We're going to be getting the tools today to be able to be proactive about determining our state of mind and our general state of happiness. So, we're speaking here about negative emotions, we're speaking about positive emotions. Generally speaking, negative emotions make us feel bad, and positive emotions make us feel good. Let's take a look at them here. Page number 5. Negative emotions such as fear, sadness, shame, anger, contempt, guilt, disgust, anxiety, disappointment, embarrassment, loneliness, envy, and hatred share the property of involving an appraisal that something is wrong. One's well-being is threatened, one's goals have to be abandoned, one lacks what one desires, one views oneself as wrong or as not projecting the desired appearance to others, and so on. In contrast, positive emotions, happiness, gratitude, pride, love, relief, hope, and so on involve appraisals that one is meeting one's goals, that a bad event has not come to pass, that one is meeting or exceeding one's own standards, that one's relationship with another is secure, and so on. Now, negative emotions doesn't mean necessarily things that are morally bad, right? Sometimes you can have a negative emotion which is morally good. For example, teshuvah, when you have regret over something bad that you've done. It's a regret, it's like a negative emotion, and that could be morally good. And on the flip side, you can have a positive, not all positive emotions are morally good. Not all positive emotions are morally good. For example, you can have lust. Lust for someone that you're not supposed to be lusting. Or adultery is positive emotion, but that's not morally good. But generally speaking, let's take a look at our own negative and positive emotions. On page 6, try to see a checklist over here of the negative emotions that you hope to be able to improve in this course. Again, very private list you're filling out of here. On page number 6, exercise 1.2. Your checklist of negative emotions. And on the flip side, if you continue on page 7 with your checklist of positive emotions that you personally would like to foster and strengthen. Now, this list over here, again, it's very personal. We'll be revisiting this list at the very end of the course, just to be able to see how we fared. So, to when we started the course, we just wanted you to fill it out so you can see where we started. We'll have a bit of a litmus test to tell where we are now and where we'll be in 6 weeks' time, God willing. Beyond just positive emotions making us feel good and negative emotions bringing us down, there's actually a deeper reason for why we need to fill ourselves with positive emotions. Imagine you have a race between a Ferrari, a 2019 Ferrari, and a 1987 Chevy. Who do you think is going to win the race? What does it depend on? What does it depend on?
How well the cars are tuned up.
Who's the driver?
Depends on the driver. Depends, I guess, if you got the keys in the ignition or not, right? Depends if you got gas in the tank, because the Ferrari, as fancy schmancy as it is, if it doesn't have gas in the tank or if the keys were forgotten at home, it's not going nowhere, right? The tortoise is going to win that race, right? Same thing with two wrestlers in the ring. You can have Hulk Hogan. Is he still alive, this guy?
Yes.
He's a real wrestler, right? You have him against a little, a little guy, and who's going to win the fight? So most people might say, well, the big guy, but that's not necessarily true.
The little guy knows where to hit.
Because it's not the size of the man in the fight as much as it is the size of the fight in the man. That is what determines the winner. Let's take a look at it in the words of the Tanya, page 8, text 3a. When attempting to be victorious over a physical opponent, such as in the case of two individuals who are wrestling with each other, each one striving to fell the other, one who is lazy and sluggish will be easily defeated and will fall, even if that individual is stronger than the other. It is exactly so in the struggle against one's negative impulses. Our life, let's face it, is a constant struggle to keep our balance. And it's critical for us to always make sure that we're upbeat, that we're positive, that we're enthusiastic, because if we're not, if we're down, we will fall, even if we might have all of the tools that we need to overcome our challenges. The Tanya continues over the same page by saying it is exactly so in the struggle against one's negative impulses. It is impossible to conquer them with laziness and sluggishness, which originates in negative emotion and in a heart that is numb like stone. You see, laziness is a behavior. It's not a feeling. It's not an emotion. Laziness is a behavior. There's no such thing as a lazy person, but there is such a thing as a person that's feeling down, as a person that's feeling depressed, as a person that's feeling uninspired or unenthusiastic, a person who's struggling with sadness, with negativity, with anger, with anxiety. That's what's going to cause laziness, sluggishness. That's what's going to cause us to lose our balance. Look at this person, the lazy person, right? You see a person who's lazy? Imagine if you offered them, you told them, in 12 hours from now, I'm giving you an all-expenses-paid trip to Hawaii. But you have to pull yourself together. You've got to make sure you pick up certain supplies. You got to pack, right? You got to get yourself to the airport. What's going to happen to this lazy person? Suddenly they're going to come to life, right? Because what just happened? Suddenly they got excited about something. So the laziness just disappeared because they were replaced by this positive emotion, right? So the laziness is not the cause. It's just a symptom of the negative emotion that's lying underneath. A great example would be from a diet. I think it's safe to assume that there are at least some people in this room that have dieted before, right? Have or maybe are dieting. And if you think about it, diets are things that we struggle with. I think in America we certainly struggle with obesity. More people die here from Coca-Cola and Diet Coke than some diseases in Africa. But when we have our diets, think about the day when you broke your diet. What happened that day? Were you feeling positive? Were you feeling excited? Were you feeling uplifted that day? Or were you feeling angry or lonely or sad or miserable about something? Right? If you think about it, the reason that you fell was because you were feeling down. We often think that to succeed in a diet, you have to have willpower. The lady, she's coming out of her fancy mansion. She's driving a BMW, dripping with jewelry. And as she drives out of her mansion, she sees a beggar. So she rolls down her window. She says, "Yeah?" She says, "Ma'am, I haven't eaten in 3 days. So she looks at him and she says, I wish I had your willpower. You know, we often think that if only we had the willpower, we'd be able to succeed in our diets. But it's not the willpower. We can have the willpower. But if you're feeling down, if you're feeling miserable, if you're feeling negative, you're just not going to have what it's going to take. If you're feeling sad or angry or stressed or anxious or hurt or inferior, that is toxic negative emotion, which we've got to steer far and clear away from. That's what's going to schlep you down. What does give us energy? What gives us the ability to overcome, the ability to be fired up and excited? The Tanya continues on page 9. Rather, conquering one's negative impulses requires alacrity, the opposite of laziness, which derives from positive emotion and from a heart that is free and a heart that is cleansed from any trace of worry and negative emotion whatsoever. So if we can only get rid of the negative emotion, we'd be able to overcome all of our challenges. We'll be able to overcome so many of our challenges, at least, because you'd never be able to win if you're sluggish, if you're lazy. You got to be what's the verb of alacrity? You got to what?
Alacrity.
You got to have alacrity. You got to be energetic. You got to be inspired, and for that, you have to have positive emotion. What the Tanya is telling us here in today's chapter 26 of Tanya, is that life's fuel is positive emotion. We've got to be in a joyous state of mind. That's what's going to fuel us forward. In text number 4, there's a beautiful adage from the Rebbe of Karlin, who says as follows: there is no biblical commandment mandating that we be joyful. It's not an actual mitzvah in the Torah that says, thou shalt be joyous. It doesn't say that in the Torah. Likewise, negative emotion is not proscribed by any biblical prohibition. There's no sin to feel down or miserable or depressed. It's not a sin. But joy accomplishes what no mitzvah can accomplish. And negative emotion causes greater damage than any sin. So joy is not a mitzvah, but joy causes the fulfillment of all the mitzvahs. Quick example, when we started out of here, we moved here 14 years ago, Khan and I, and we were starting a community. And I just remember the excitement we felt every time we spoke to someone. Anytime we learned Torah or Hasidic philosophy with someone who would say to us, Rabbi, I wish I knew this 20, 30 years ago. It would have saved my marriage. And we felt it would have helped me salvage the relationship with my kids. I would have been able to have such a more meaningful life. And it was that realization of being able to have such a positive impact upon people that gave Han and I this enthusiasm, this fire, this passion to be able to do things that would have otherwise seemed quite impossible. And we had to literally, to buy this building and to go through the impossible hoops of getting this place zoned all by ourselves. At that time, we didn't know anybody. We were just us. We didn't really know. We didn't have people that understood how to navigate the city and the bureaucracy and the rules and we didn't know any of this stuff. It was literally just us. And to raise the millions of dollars that were necessary to make it happen. But I just remember being focused on that vision of the people, focusing on the children and how many people would be coming through the doors and how many lives would be touched. Was that vision, that positive, that positive energy, that beautiful vision of how many lives and souls would be turned on fire, that just made us so happy and so joyous that in retrospect allowed us to do some things that were almost impossible because we were just excited. And you can also think about, how you felt at certain times in your life when you've been super happy. That the Talmud tells us that at the wedding of a person's only child, they're exhibiting such extraordinary joy. That you've been able to raise a child to be able to reach this point that you can do things that you ordinarily wouldn't be able to do. You can say things that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to say, and you can do things that you normally wouldn't be able to do. That's the power of joy. It's not a mitzvah, but it's something which enables all the mitzvahs to happen. And sadness and depression is not something which is a sin per se, but it's something that causes and leads to all the sins. And that's why what we're trying to do today, what the Tanya is really trying to do here, like a true doctor. The Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, is not focused on the local symptom, the localized symptom. The Alter Rebbe focuses on the core of the problem. We're not going to be dealing with the details of the problems, the localized breakdowns and failures of our lives. What the Alter Rebbe does is that he focuses on the core of the issue, on the foundation, which is how to steer clear of negative emotion, how to stay attached to positive emotion, how to maintain a positive, uplifted state of mind, and to steer clear from one that's down, miserable, and depressed. Now, this idea was actually a novel idea of the Tanya, because even though we were introduced in the Torah, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, you're supposed to serve God with joy. We know that you are supposed to serve God with joy, but we didn't know that joy is needed always. We thought that you need to just have joy when you do a mitzvah. But what the Alter Rebbe teaches us in Tanya is that every moment of our lives, we've really got to be infused with joy. This course is how to fuel ourselves with positive emotion. Summarize this here. Here. So negative emotions exacerbate our problems. Negative emotions deplete our energy. But positive emotions, and the tools for positive emotions, is what we're going to be discovering here in this course. How are we doing so far? Any questions so far? We good? So with this, I'd like to introduce you now. I think we can all relate to the problem of the negative emotions. There's nothing really new about this. We all know about our negative emotions and how we struggle with that. But we all try and reach into the positive emotions. It's a lovely idea. It'd be great if we're able to reach that point. Let's see if we can make that happen. So in order to reach that, I'd like to introduce you to the book of Tanya, which again was written by the founder of the Chabad movement, by the Alter Rebbe.
The followers of Chabad Lubavitch refer to the book of Tanya as the Bible of Hasidism. It has spawned several thousand editions, was published in myriad locations across the globe, and it is studied daily by thousands of Jews, in private, in classes, online.
This is what the page should look like.
And through apps. Its author, Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi, was an 18th century scholar and mystic of rare abilities. While our nation produced many great sages over the millennia, Rabbi Shner Zalman stands among the select few that tower over our people's history and power our progress to an inspired destiny. In 1775, he founded the Chabad Lubavitch Hasidic movement, and in 1796, he agreed to have his magnum opus, the Tanya, published for public benefit. For 20 years, Rabbi Shner Zalman painstakingly weighed each letter and word of his manuscript, and Jewry has spent the subsequent 200 years unpacking the gifts of guidance he invested within those sacred phrases. In the Tanya, one discovers a highly methodical presentation of the foundational principles of Hasidism: how to serve God sincerely, joyfully, how to remain humble, motivated, how to deal with inner struggles, the purpose of life, of challenge, of existence, of the individual. Insights flow with clarity, forming a cohesive river of wisdom that revolutionized Jewish thought. Surprisingly, the Tanya is not written in the style of a philosophical or theological thesis. Rather, it is framed as a response. Here is the work's purpose as expressed by its author in his foreword to the Tanya. I address those with whom I had frequent warm conversations and who revealed to me all the secrets of their hearts and minds in all that regard to their heartfelt service of God. This work is comprised of responses to many questions frequently posed by Hasidim in our land, for they seek advice and moral guidance in the service of God, each according to their spiritual station. time no longer permits me to reply to everyone individually and in detail. Besides, people forget the responses I give them in the course of conversation. I have therefore recorded all the replies to all the questions to be preserved for perpetuity and to be readily available to all. There is no longer any need for people to press to be admitted to talk with me in private, for in this work, everyone can find counsel to soothe their soul and proper guidance on any matter that one finds difficult in the service of God. Rabbi Shner Zalman was overwhelmed. He had perfect answers to difficulties that had plagued sincere worshippers since the dawn of time. Who would not wish to meet him and receive life-changing guidance? But a day has only so many hours, while he had tens of thousands of followers who streamed to his door from across Eastern Europe. He therefore set his quill to paper in an effort to do what none had dared to do before: to collect answers to a lifetime of spiritual questions from people of all walks of life. This book would contain, in his words, all the responses to all the questions, and it would be formatted so that it was readily available to all, for all Jews, for all times. The Tanya contains solutions for each individual's struggles in their spiritual and emotional lives, for the Jews of his own times, and for our struggles today.
The Alter Rebbe was a brilliant doctor of the soul. And one of the most revolutionary ideas that he introduces to us in the Tanya, an absolute game-changing idea, which revolutionized all of our understanding about who we are and what our purpose is in this world, was in the opening 2 chapters of Tanya, when the Alter Rebbe told us, reveals to us, I just want to backtrack a moment. I just want to backtrack and state something which is very important. I think I neglected to mention. That when Moses comes down from Mount Sinai, he's carrying with him, we know, the 10 Commandments, right? The 2 tablets, right? But together with that, he's also carrying with him the written Torah, which is what we have in the Ark in the synagogue. The 5 books of Moses. Some of which were not yet complete because they didn't happen yet, but he was writing them over the next 40 years. But at least the first third of it he had already written in the written Torah. So he has 2 things so far, the 10 Commandments, and he's got the written Torah, but he also has with him the oral Torah. The oral Torah is oral. It's the oral explanation of what the Torah is actually talking about. When it says in the Shema, and you shall bind them upon your hearts and between your eyes, what are we talking about? But what does tefillin look like? What color is tefillin? It doesn't say. Is it square, round, purple, oval, green? What is it? What's inside? All of that is the oral law. The written law is very vague, very cryptic, very enigmatic. The oral law explains to us all the details, right? So he's got the 10 Commandments, the written law, but he's also got the oral law. That's what he was doing upstairs for 40 days and 40 nights. He was getting the oral law. But in addition to that, he also has the secret law. The secret law is the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah. The word Kabbalah means received, something which was passed on from teacher to student in closely guarded, secretive circles for thousands of years. Moses passed this on to a group of students, who passed it on to a group of students, who passed it on to another group of students. Whilst the oral law was taught to everybody, the secret law was not. It was the secrets of Kabbalah. And for reasons beyond the pale of this conversation, 500 years ago, the sages of Tzfat, the Kabbalists of Tzfat, ruled that from this point on, it is now a mitzvah to reveal this wisdom to the masses. And thus was spawned the Chabad movement, which was taking the secrets of the Kabbalah and exposing them to all of mankind. Hence, the book of Tanya wasn't just an invention of the Alter Rebbe's perception of reality, as much as it was a closely guarded secret that was passed on for 3,000 years from Moses, who received it on Mount Sinai, until the Alter Rebbe finally had the eloquence and the ability to publish it in the book of Tanya. Now that we understand where the Tanya is coming from, this brilliant wisdom, we can appreciate that the novelty, The game-changing, earth-shattering revolution of the opening chapters of Tanya is that who we are is not one but two. Each and every one of us has a split personality. We have not one, but two very different souls. If you're feeling a little conflicted, if you're feeling drawn in opposite directions, sometimes you're feeling yourself drawn this way and very soon after you feel yourself drawn in that direction, that means you're human. That means you're normal. Sometimes you want to rip the hair out of your head, wondering if I'm coming or going. The answer is both. You have not one, but two very different souls that are raging inside of you. And because of this, we all have an inherent struggle to define our own identity. We're constantly struggling. We're vacillating. We're toggling between two different identities, almost like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That is who we are, because we've got two different souls that are fighting within inside of us. What's the difference between these two souls? Most people think that the primary... If you take a look at page 12, take a look at this. How would you complete the sentence? For most people... What? For most people, the primary struggle in life is between... For most people, the struggle in life is between 9 and 5. Not really. As many of us will say, it's between good and evil. Tanya says no. The main struggle that we have is not the struggle between good and evil. It is the struggle between our two souls, between our identity crisis. The revolution of Tanya. The revolution of Tanya is not only the resolution to the struggle, which we will be working through in the next 5 sessions, but even more importantly, it is the definition of the struggle. We're not struggling between good and bad. We're struggling between something else. Take a look. Page 13. This is the student of the Arizal. The Arizal was the sage, the Kabbalist in Tzfat, who was the one who said moments ago that from now on it's a mitzvah to publicize this wisdom. He was the game changer who took the secrets of the Kabbalah and he started to mass produce them to everybody in the whole world. That was the Arizal. His student, the only authorized student to note his teachings, was Rabbi Chaim Vital, and he's quoted in chapter 1 of Tanya as follows. Rabbi Chaim Vital writes in Sharia Kedusha, quoting the Arizal, that each of us, whether righteous or wicked, has two souls, two distinct life forces. As it is written, I have created souls. Isaiah, I have created souls. And it's talking about one person. Within one person, God has created souls, plural. And this is the origin of the understanding, this prophecy of Isaiah, that each and every one of us is made up of not one, but at least two different souls. One life force originates in unholiness. All negative character traits stem from this life force. This soul is what we're going to call, what we do call the natural soul. The natural soul. The natural soul, sometimes called the animal soul, is not bad. It is not a bad soul. Are animals bad? Animals aren't bad. It's an animal soul. The thing about animals is that they're just self-serving. This soul is a soul which is self-serving. That's what it does. It serves its own needs. It's very normal for a human being to serve their own needs, to be self-oriented, to be self-centered. You eat because you need to survive. You work because you need to pay your bills. This is normal. That's the natural soul. There's nothing evil about that. It's just self-serving. But look at this. Take a look at the next text. As he continues, this natural soul isn't just the origin of negative character traits like anger and sadness. Page 13. 6b at the bottom of 13. This life force, this natural soul, is also the source of good character traits, such as mercy and benevolence. So both bad characters, as well as good characteristics, come from this natural soul. You see, sometimes you can do a good thing for a selfish reason. Right? Sometimes you can give charity. Why do you give charity? Why did you give charity? Some people give charity because they want to feel good. Because they're just feeling lousy and it's going to make them feel better. Some people give charity because they need the fame. They need the fame. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? What do you think? It's good? It's good. Certainly for the poor people it's good. I don't think they care why you gave it. But at the end of the day, that behavior is a good behavior. It's a positive characteristic, good character trait, charity. But it's motivated by the natural soul because it's self-serving. It's self-centered. It's because I need to be feeling good. I need to be self-promoting. Take a look at the flip side. Sometimes people give charity and they say, as long as I remain anonymous. Right? What does that mean? Is that coming from a natural soul? Well, it depends.
If they want,
Maybe they're saying that because they want the person who they're talking to know that I'm so good, that I'm even better than the people who give for the wrong reasons. You see what I'm saying? He's trying to impress the person that he's talking to right now.
Maybe he's truly modest. And only you know why you did it. Right? I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad over here. Right? I'm just saying, what the Tanya is telling us is that both good and negative character traits come from the natural soul, is because the natural soul is not a bad soul. It's a good soul. He does good things and he does bad things. The only question is what motivates him, and that is self-centered. Like any animal, you don't find animals walking around taking their. You don't find like a hyena going over to a lion and says, "You look really hungry. I would like you to eat my zebra here." It doesn't really happen like that. The hyena comes in, he's like, I'm hungry, I'm coming to eat. I don't care who else is eating, I'm pushing in. Right? That's what happens, because that's what animals do. They serve themselves. He eats, he drinks, he sleeps, he procreates, because that's what he needs to do to survive. But then you have a second soul. I think we can all relate to the first soul. Right? It's normal. This is why we wake up in the morning. That's why we don't fall off of buildings. Because we want to survive. That's why we go to the doctor when we're not feeling well. Because we're not suicidal. We just want to survive. It's a normal, healthy place to be, is to be self-serving. But then there's a second soul. And this soul, folks, is literally out of this world. It's not of this world. It's actually weird. It's the divine soul. It's the godly soul. As opposed to the natural soul that's motivated by a need to serve oneself. The divine soul does things not to serve itself. What motivates the divine soul? It's not self-centered, it's God-centered. So it's not self-centered, it's actually God-centered, right? Here you go, let's take a look on the screen. We've given you a visual on the two souls here. So you got the natural soul, right? The cupcake. This is the source of negative character traits, the drive for self-preservation and self-gratification, and it's self-focused, self-oriented. On the flip side, we've got the divine soul, which is literally a piece of God. Right? It's not centered on self-preservation. It's centered on purpose. It's purpose-driven. And instead of being focused on self, it's focused on God. That's why it does anything. Now you can really ask yourself. Let's go back to that guy that gave the charity, right? When somebody donated, $10,000 to charity, why did they do it?
there's a big question here. That isn't really relevant to anybody else. Nobody else really cares. But in your own state of mind, in your own self, being true to yourself, and your own ability to differentiate between your positive and negative emotions, you can recognize the source, the motivation why you gave that $10,000 charity.
Could be both.
It absolutely could be both. Some people give the $10,000 because they want to make themselves feel good, because they feel guilty, because they did something. There's all sorts of reasons why they would want to do that. But then there's other people that say, I'm giving this money because this money doesn't belong to me. I know I just earned $100,000 and God was kind to me by allowing me to keep 90%. And when I give away 10% of my earnings, I'm not being a nice guy. I'm just doing the right thing. I'm just paying my partner. I'm lucky that my partner's not asking for 50%. God is my partner. And instead of God asking for 50%, he's only asking for 10%. That's a pretty good deal. That is not self-focused. That is God-focused. Two people doing exactly the same behavior. They both writing the same check. One is being driven by the natural soul, and the other is being driven by the godly soul. By the way, both of them are doing a mitzvah.
You get credit anyway.
You get your credit. But this course is on character refinement. This course is not about the bottom line. It's about the finer issues in life. It's about your ability to identify what's going on under your own hood, what's going on in your engine, if you're healthy or if you're unhealthy. And if we're able to control our ability to identify with the divine soul, that is the key to positive emotions, to feeling good. The ability to be able to identify with our divine soul instead of with our natural soul, that is what holds the key to resolving all negative emotions, as will be addressed throughout the duration of this course. We all, every single one of us, has a rational mind. And that rational mind can constantly decide which soul we want to identify with. We have a raging tug of war going on inside of us at every single moment in time. And it is our objective and rational decision at every single moment in time, and you, to decide which soul we want to identify with. And the way you identified 5 minutes ago or 15 seconds ago has nothing to do with how you're going to identify now or in 5 minutes from now. Because we are constantly vacillating between these two identities that are inside of us. The resolution of this conflict, the Alter Rebbe tells us, the Tanya tells us in chapter 32, the resolution of this inner struggle inside of ourselves, of this identity crisis, is the actual purpose and reason why our souls descended into this world. If you can master this, you will have achieved self-mastery. You will have achieved positive emotion and state of mind. You will have achieved happiness.
Say that again.
The resolution, and this is Tanya chapter 32. Having clearly understood and defined the identity crisis that rages within inside of ourselves, the ability to resolve this identity crisis is the purpose for which our souls descended to this world. Okay. How many narcissists does it take to change a light bulb? How many narcissists do you think does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is obviously only one. He stands there holding the light bulb and the whole world revolves around him. That's the self-centered. That's the natural soul inside of us. But you realize how the godly soul is really not of this world? How many people do you know that do things purely altruistically? That are purely selfless? Do you know people like this?
Yeah. At times.
They're few and far between.
Yeah.
But when you meet them, they're beautiful. They're inspiring. They're so happy when you meet those people. You know what I'm talking about? It's the people that are self-absorbed, that are constantly me. You find them to be normal. And it's the people that are selfless, the people that are not focused on themselves. They just seem to be happier. You know, I often say in the analogy of a child, when you see a child who's crying, what do you say to the child? You ask him what's wrong. Because the child's supposed to be happy. And when you see an adult who's happy, you say, what's wrong with you? Because the adult is supposed to be miserable. You're supposed to be forbidden. You see somebody smiling ear to ear, you're like, what are you smoking, man? What's going on here? Why are you not being normal? You're just supposed to be stoic, somber, serious. Why is that? Why are children naturally happy and adults are naturally unhappy? It's because kids are able to run around without a diaper and they don't care. They're so happy. They're just free, carefree, careless. They love it. They don't think anybody's looking at them. They're not even thinking about themselves. A child's sense of ego is non-existent. It doesn't have a sense of ego. The problems begin, and we can see it in our home, you know, when we have all these little kids, Baruch Hashem, we have 8 kids, and we see them, and it's like life and freeze, freeze photography. You have every moment in life and stills, you know? So you can see the baby, and you can see the 2-year-old, and you can see the 3-year-old, and the 5-year-old, and the 7-year-old, and the 9-year-old, the 12-year-old, and you see how they all react to the same exact behavior. So the child, the baby, doesn't care anything. But then you look at the one who's a little older, who has a strong sense of ego, and you see them, they're much more serious. Because the more we identify with our ego, the older we become. You know, when we become mature, right? We become self-aware. Now we become miserable. Maybe we're becoming immature, right? Maybe we're moving away from where we need to be going instead of closer to where we're going.
Yeah, but the baby and the little ones, they have all their needs taken care of. It's easy for them. They have nothing else.
They're
to
not
think
thinking about their needs. They just
That's right.
live
They don't
in the
know,
moment.
right?
They're just living right there in the moment. They're not worrying about, you know what? I know what my suppers for the next 12 days are taken care of. I can go out and play right now. The toddler doesn't say that. This moment, I'm good. It doesn't matter if I'm wearing a smelly diaper or not a smelly diaper. It makes a difference. You know, we wear butt naked, no problem. Fine. Right? Because that's the child that has no sense of ego. The more we identify with our natural soul, the more we identify with our negative emotion. The more we identify with our divine soul, with our godly soul, the more we are connecting with our positive emotion. This is the theme that's going to be developed through the next 5 sessions of this course. So, what I want you to realize is that this revolution of the Tanya, and this is a really novel concept nobody else ever told us before, that there's 2 of me inside of this body. That's an amazing realization. Which makes so many things make sense. But that realization, the Alter Rebbe doesn't really tell us that we have a conflict. He tells us the nature of the conflict is not between good and bad, but rather between self-centered and purpose-oriented. Why am I here? What's my purpose? What was I sent down to this world for? So gesund.
You sneezed on the truth.
Yeah.
Yes.
This conflict arises not only each time we have to make a decision. This conflict is not only about every time we have to make a decision. The conflict applies in terms of our identity. It's an identity crisis. It's not about, okay, so which one of me is going to be expressing myself right now? Am I going to do this for selfish reasons? Am I going to do it for purpose-driven reasons? For godly soul reasons, driven by the godly soul, driven by the natural soul? It's a state of identity. And therefore it applies all the time. Here. Right, so maybe we can summarize it over here. The conventional understanding is that we struggle between right versus wrong, right? On the top. The conventional understanding of our human struggle, of our greatest struggle between right and wrong, as you suggested earlier. But the Tanya teaches us that's not our greatest challenge. That's not what we were put into this world. Our struggle, our greatest challenge is to be able to differentiate between the divine and the natural soul. The conflict in the conventional understanding is right versus wrong, is moral versus immoral. But the Tanya teaches us that the conflict is purpose-driven versus self-centered and self-oriented. The world thinks that the question is, what will I do? The Tanya explains that the question is, who am I? Right? Who am I? Who am I now? This is not an all or nothing thing. You don't decide, okay, I'm just, like I did that exercise in the past 7 days. We asked you which the 1 to 5 exercise the past 7 days, and somebody said, oh, this is not a proper reflection of me. It's a proper reflection of you the past 7 days. That's what it is, right? Because we are dynamic beings. We're constantly moving. We're not static. Okay, yeah, I reached a certain level 5 years ago, and therefore I'm there forever. No, we're constantly evolving. And the time of the conflict, the world thinks, conventional wisdom tells us that our conflict is only when faced with a moral choice. Tanya teaches us we're constantly faced with this battle. We're constantly struggling with this.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the woman who said she had the cataract surgery last week, so that's her expression of happiness was, or positive and negativity was different last week. However, is it true in my thinking that the Tanya would say, even though you had the cataract surgery, there are ways to deal with that?
Absolutely. You can't control the wind,
yeah,
but you can adjust the sails. Things are going to happen to you. The question is how you're going to deal with them. Right? Remember Adam in the Garden of Eden found a reason to be miserable.
yeah.
And the Holocaust victims in Auschwitz, they found a reason to be happy. Right? It's not the cataract surgery. It's a shanda to be able to live your life in a way that your state of mind is subject to the vicissitudes that surround you. Some things, yes, of course, some things are worse than others. And we're going to be addressing that. This is very general right now, right? But to be able to maintain a proactive state of mind is so empowering. But you can't entertain the notion of a proactive state of mind before you even understand the options that lie within. There's a story of a chassid who found out that his forest, he owned the forests, they burned down. You know the name Gorelik? Name Gorelik. In Russian, I don't speak Russian, but from what I hear, Gorelik means burnt wood. So there was this family that had burnt wood or something. They lost a lot of money. So this guy, he lost his forest to get burnt down, and he became very poor or into debt very quickly. So somebody saw him a few minutes later, and he saw him studying Torah, and he says, "Aren't you worried?" And he said, "Worried? I'm finished worrying. I worried for a minute, and I'm done worrying. Now I'm going back to normal life." Isn't that incredible control? Right? He says some people worry for like 8 months. It doesn't help them.
8 years.
8 years, right? Worry is like a rocking chair. Makes you feel like you're doing something, but you're getting nowhere, right? So he understood. He understood that yes, something bad happened, but he was in control of his reaction. That's a tremendous state of self-control. There's another story, another chassid of the Alter Rebbe. And these Hasidim of the Alter Rebbe were profound people to be able to maintain this kind of composure. This Chassid, his name was Reb Moshe Maisels. Reb Moshe Maisels was fluent in Russian and French. He was bilingual. So in 1812, when Napoleon invaded Russia, there was a big war, obviously, the Franco-Russian War, right? And for whatever reason, most of the rabbis supported the French, but the Alter Rebbe supported... Sorry, the other way around. Most of the rabbis supported the... I'm sorry. Sorry, most of the rabbis, first way. Most of the rabbis supported the French, but the Alter Rebbe supported the Russians, the Tsar, the wicked Tsar. So it's a big discussion about why that was, not for now. So he sent this chassid, Moshe Meisels, to serve as an interpreter for Napoleon, to be a secret double agent. That he should be an interpreter in the highest echelons of their offices, and he should be reporting to the Russians what's going on in the French high command. One day, Napoleon realized that wherever they sent their forces is where they were met with Russian forces. He realized that there's a leak. There's a whistleblower here somewhere, right? So what did he do? He charges into the high command, into the headquarters, to the room. And Napoleon was a short man. He was very arrogant. If you know the story of Napoleon, he wouldn't look up. He was very short. He would never look up at anybody. He would only talk at eye level. Even though he reached somebody's pupik, he was still talking at a pupik level. You want to talk to me, you come down to my level. I don't look up at nobody. This is Napoleon. They called him the Napoleon complex, right? So he charges into the room like he owns the place, and he comes over to this chassid Moshe Meisels, and he places his hand on his heart and he says, "You're a spy." How would you react? You really are the spy, by the way. And this guy comes to you, Napoleon, the emperor, and he says, "You're a spy. Your cover was just blown." How would you react? What?
Fearful, angry.
Fearful? I think your heart would beat at like 400 miles an hour, right? This chassid calmly said, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm loyal to you, Your Majesty. And his heart rate remained normal. And he survived. Later on, the Hasidim asked him, how on earth did you manage? And he said, the entire purpose of what our Rebbe has taught us in the book of Tanya is how to experience self-mastery. That is the entire purpose for which our souls have been sent down to this world. Now that we understand what the conflict is, we can start to begin to apply the principle. So I said before that we're all born with the default setting of the natural soul. We're all born naturally inclined towards selfishness. Our divine soul, by the way, only begins to enter at the bris, and it finishes entering at the bar mitzvah or the bas mitzvah. That's when the divine soul finishes entering into our body. It's way later than the natural soul inside of the child, right? So it's considered, that's what's called the second soul, because it comes in later. Our life's mission is to reset our identity, to reset from our default factory setting, which is natural soul, and to identify with our divine soul. This shift, we said, is the key to resolving all negative emotions, to be able to bring us to a state of mind of happiness, to feeling good, as will be explained through this course. And I want you to take a look at text number 7, please, on page 16. Another quote from Isaiah, who says, "V'yosfu anavim b'Hashem simcha." Those who are humble shall continuously rejoice in God. Those who are humble shall continuously rejoice in God. Now, it's important to understand, why are those that are humble continuously rejoicing in God? In Hebrew, there's 2 words for humble. One is shafal. Shafal is on the screen. Shafal it means almost humble. It actually means meek. Shafal means meek. It's a person who lacks self-confidence or has a low self-concept. Right? He's got he's struggling with his self-esteem. Right? He's got a negative outlook, like a problem. He's actually obsessed with himself. He just has a negative self-image, but he's really self-centered. Shafel, yeah. Shafal, yeah. So this is a person that he has a low self-esteem, but really it's all about himself. He doesn't like the pimple on his nose. He feels that he's not worthy, and therefore he is meek, right? But really this person is obsessed with himself. The other word is anav, the word quoted in Isaiah here. This is the person who has a divine self-concept. This is the person that has a very strong sense of self.
Emotion.
This is like Moshe, like Moses. Very strong sense of self. And this person is humble before God. They're really, they know their place before God. They know their purpose before God. So they're not obsessed with themselves. They're actually obsessed with, they're surrounded by their purpose, but they understand their mission in this world. That's what it means to be humble. It's not a negative self-concept. It's a healthy self-concept. You know your place. You just understand your mission in this world. That's what it means to be humble. And that's when Isaiah says, the humble shall continuously rejoice in God. Because it's the person that is able to remove their obsession on their own ego. To mitigate their self-identification with their natural soul. That's the person that's going to be identifying with their other sense of self, with their divine soul, being not self-centered but purpose-oriented. That's the person that's going to experience joy in God. So joy, a positive, happy state of mind, is going to be found, as we're discussing in the duration of this course, is going to be found in the one who has the self-mastery, the ability to identify with their divine soul. And that's what the objective of this course is, to show the way to positive emotion through the paradigm shift of our soul's identity.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you leave, you die when your divine soul has been developed? We're working our way to find that divine soul, to utilize.
So you're saying the moment that you find that you identify with your divine soul, then your mission is done. You're gonna kick the bucket.
Is that most people's mission?
No, we said that our mission in this world is to be able
Right.
to experience a self-mastery, to redefine the factory setting, the default setting of our self-centeredness, to be able to be divine-oriented.
Right. And if you don't,
But that's not when you're not going to die because you became divine-oriented.
No, but if you don't develop this, you come back in another lifetime too.
Oh, you're getting into reincarnation now.
Yeah.
So look, if you didn't fulfill your purpose in this lifetime, then the Jewish belief in reincarnation is that you got to come back to finish unfinished business. That's the Jewish belief in reincarnation. You're looking tired already, huh? That's exhausting. The thought that you're going to come back to this world all over again, right? Just get it done this time. Do it properly, right? Yeah. So this is our purpose in this world. I just want to conclude with an example, a practical example, of how defining the struggle is the key to resolving the struggle and finding positive emotion. Let's take a look at page 16. Have you ever felt like you don't belong? Like your friends or colleagues are going to discover that you're a fraud and that you don't actually deserve your job and accomplishments? If so, you're in good company. These feelings are known as imposter syndrome, or what psychologists often call imposter phenomenon. An estimated 70% of people, experience these imposter feelings at some point in their lives, according to a review article published in the International Journal of Behavioral Science. Imposter syndrome affects all kinds of people from all parts of life: women, men, medical students, marketing managers, actors, executives. Imposter syndrome can apply to anyone who isn't able to internalize and own their successes, says psychologist Audrey Irvin. Imposter syndrome expert Valerie Young, who is the author of a book on the subject, The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women, has also found patterns in people who experience imposter feelings. Perfectionists set extremely high expectations for themselves, and even if they meet 99% of their goals, they're going to feel like failures. Any small mistake will make them question their own competence. This is what's called imposter syndrome. How can we take a look at the question? How might living a divine soul, purpose-oriented life preclude imposter syndrome? How do you think that identifying with your divine soul might preclude imposter syndrome? Feeling authentic?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, Corey?
Well, if you're living from a God place, then That's what's real. That's
Okay,
outside
so let me
of
backtrack. You're getting into the solution, but let me just explain the problem. So here you are. How often has it happened to you that your friends looked at you and said, "You go to Chabad? Seriously? I know you. We grew up together." Right? Has this ever happened to you? Like, what do you mean you're not available Friday night? Like, what? Are you okay? Did the rabbi brainwash you? What's going on? Right? This has happened, right? Right? Can you relate, right? So sometimes, we'll do a good deed, and we'll feel inauthentic. We'll feel like this is not a true expression of me. I'm just a faker. I'm a liar. It's not really me. I just gave that $5,000 contribution, but it's a fake. It's not real. It's not who I really am. Have you ever felt that sense of inauthenticity? Right? When you're standing in shul and you're wondering, what am I doing here? I belong in the golf course. This is my place. I need to be fishing on the yacht right now. I have no idea why I'm at a Torah class on a Monday morning. It makes no sense. I don't know. It feels so strange. Right? This is something which we all struggle with. And when we're able to realize, like Corey just pointed out, that we actually have not one but two souls. That part of me is natural and part of me is not natural, is divine. Part of me is self-centered and part of me is purpose-oriented, is divine-centered, God-centered. It's then that I realize, you know what? Part of me belongs in the golf course and part of me belongs in shul right here, right now. Absolutely. Part of me eats unspeakable foods that rhyme with mobster. And part of me lays tefillin every day. And that's not an imposter. Both of those are authentic acts. Because I am a dichotomy. I am two. There's two different parts of me, right? That are in constant conflict. When Rivka, our matriarch, in a couple weeks in the Torah, Rivka was the daughter-in-law of Abraham and Sarah. She married Isaac. So she had a very strange pregnancy. She was very worried about her pregnancy because anytime she walked by a house of monotheism, the baby would want to come out. And then when she walked by a house of idolatry, of polytheism, paganism, the baby would want to come out. And she was freaked out by this baby. Take a look. Page 18. The children struggled within her and she said, if so, why did I desire to conceive? She thought this baby's a meshuggah. And she went to seek divine counsel. So the verse continues. God said to her, she went to the son of Noah, Shem and Aver, a very old man, very great tzaddik. God said to her through this righteous man, 2 nations. You got twins in there. You got twins. That's what he said to her. 2 nations are in your belly. 2 kingdoms will separate from your womb. One kingdom will always be mightier than the other kingdom, and eventually the elder will serve the younger. Who were her babies? She had Jacob and Esau. These are the Jews and the Christians. That's what she had in there. Right? She had Jacob and Esau. And now suddenly she felt better. Why do you think she felt better? No, Muslims are not. It's the Uncle Ishmael. That's a different part of the family. This is Jacob and Esau, is the Christians and the Jews. So why was she happy now when she found out that she was calm? Now she didn't have to rip her hair out of her head anymore because she had a good son and a bad son. Now she was happy. Why would she be happy now? Why is this better news than having one meshuggah son? Because she would rather have an authentically bad child than a child that is inauthentically authentic. She would rather have one son who's good and one son who's bad, both of them true to themselves, rather than having one son who's inauthentically authentic, who's simply confused. One son that's going to monotheism and paganism all at the same time. Schizophrenic. And the reason that we're taught the story in the Torah is because each and every one of us has a Jacob and an Esau inside of ourselves. We have a self-centered soul, the Esau, and we have a God-centered soul, the Jacob, and they're constantly in struggle with each other. We are not imposters. We just have a split personality. And that's what? We're not imposters. We just have a split personality. You know, when somebody asked the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, he said that he feels that he's an evil person. Because when he comes to pray to God, he finds that he's filled with all sorts of distracting negative thoughts. So he thinks that there's something wrong with him. Because here I am, I'm trying to daven, I'm trying to talk to God, I'm trying to be spiritual and holy, and at that time I'm thinking all sorts of lustful, adulterous, terrible thoughts. There's got to be something wrong with me. And the way the Alter Rebbe responded to him was that there's nothing wrong with you. Because remember, you've got two souls fighting inside of you. When you come in and you start to pray to God, when your divine soul lights up on fire, what do you think your natural soul's doing? You think it just goes to huddle in a corner? No. When two wrestlers in the ring are fighting with each other, what happens when one suddenly gets the fire? What does the other one do? He says, knock me out? No. He increases his game. He strengthens his fight to match. So it's not despite your prayer that you're feeling elevated negative thoughts. It's because of your prayer. Because your divine soul is on fire, that's why you're feeling elevated negative thoughts, because your natural soul is feeling intimidated. Take a look at it in the words of the Alter Rebbe here on page 19. Here's the Alter Rebbe's answer to him. He says, don't be upset or dejected while serving God in prayer, for it ought to be a joyous experience. On the contrary, intensify your efforts and focus your energy to concentrate on your prayer with increased joy and gladness. Understand that the foreign thought that has entered your mind derives from the natural soul which wages war against the divine soul within all strugglers. Do not ascribe to the commonly held error that a foreign thought is evidence that your prayer is worthless and that your prayer, if your prayer was proper, no foreign thoughts would intrude. This would be true if you had possessed only one soul. If you had only one soul and you're trying to be spiritual and you're thinking about adultery, you got a problem. But since you have, this would be true if you possessed only one soul, a single soul that both prays as well as experiences the foreign thoughts. The deepest truth, however, is that you have two souls that wage war against each other. The Alter Rebbe continues, he says an analogy, imagine you're praying, and imagine you have a nudnik who's disrupting you, who's trying to distract you from your prayer. Was that going to make you feel that you're inauthentic? No! It's going to cause you to strengthen your game, because the neighbor from hell next door is playing music to distract your prayers, right? He's playing rock and roll or death metal or something, heavy metal, in order to distract you from your prayers, right? That's not a reason that there's something wrong with you. That means that he's feeling threatened by your elevated state of consciousness. And that's why I want to conclude today by saying that the way that we can deal with one example today, we've set the groundwork of the self-mastery of this course. But the first example we've introduced today is the example of authenticity and our feeling hypocritical, our feeling inauthentic, our feeling undeserving, our feeling like we don't belong, our feeling like we're fake. I'm encouraging you to take joy in rejecting the hypocrisy and identifying with the real you. Realizing that each and every moment is independent of the other. And yes, maybe 5 minutes ago you were having negative emotions, but right now you can experience self-mastery. And you can identify with your divine soul. This is just one example of positive emotions which you're able to experience through the paradigm shift of identifying with your divine soul. And if you could just take a look at page 20. What we've done today, the benefits of the divine soul model. The benefits of the divine soul model here are, I'll show it to you on the screen. that the negative emotion, in the area of the negative emotion that results from feeling inauthentic, and the rationale is that every selfless deed is an authentic expression of the divine soul. That's how we're going to deal with that. Realizing that we have two souls and both of them have an authentic expression. And in exercise 1.5, you can write for yourself what area of your life you can adopt a divine soul perspective and thereby reduce feelings of inauthenticity. I just would like to do with you a meditation. I'd like to experiment with you on a meditation, all right? So if you could, I'm going to play this beautiful Hasidic tune. It's called the Poltava Nigun. Beautiful music of the soul. It's a wordless song. Okay, it's a wordless song called the Poltava Nigun by Rabbi Poltava of Poltava. It's a place. And whilst we do that, I'm going to ask you, if you feel comfortable, to close your eyes and just follow along with the meditation that I'm going to lead you in, okay? Gently close your eyes and focus on your breath, preferring the breath to enter and exit through your nose. And as you breathe in, become aware that the air is cool. And as you breathe out, become aware that the air you're exhaling is slightly warmer. Focus on that temperature differential, gently breathing in and breathing out. Deeper breath, allowing the breath to enter deep into your being, and allowing with each breath a deeper flow down to your abdomen. Become aware of your inner being, of your drive for a good life, comfortable, protected, that seeks to conserve itself. Your inner being that seeks to have pleasure. Identify your natural soul. Notice it expressing itself in your daily life, in the desire to live well, comfortable, and to feel as much pleasure as possible, a drive that is all about me. Now, I want you to direct your thinking and your breathing deeper inside your being. Search deeper for one more shining light inside of you. Find the light, find the soul that makes you want to fulfill your purpose, your mission here in the world. Find the soul that wants to do what God wants from you. Find the light that is drawn to its source up above. This is your godly soul. It is an impulse fleeing from the me, an impulse that sets you free that makes you live for a greater purpose, to fulfill God's will. Feel your divine soul expressing itself. Feel the fire, the desire, the longing it has to reunite with its source up above, with its creator, to be aligned with its mission, to do as God wants, the mission that He has given you. Do not let the natural soul get in the way of your divine soul. Do not let it obscure its authenticity. Take away your pleasure in seeing that selfless act you did. For every act you did has value and truth. Feel the sincerity and purity of your divine soul, overcoming the foreign thoughts that come from your natural soul. Focus again on your breath, gently breathing in and out. Begin moving your fingers and your toes here in the room. Move your fingers, move your toes, and when you're ready, gently open your eyes, coming all the way back, having found within you the divine impulse that is really you. I'm just going to conclude with a summary.
Lesson 1. Achieving authenticity. 1. Life is a constant struggle. We have the tools necessary to be victorious in our struggles, but we cannot win if we're lazy and lethargic. 2. Laziness and lethargy are not root issues. They are symptoms of negative emotions, uncomfortable emotions that make us feel bad. Conversely, positive emotions, pleasant emotions that make us feel good, allow us to be victorious in our struggles. 3. Because our life struggles are constant, positive emotion is needed at all times. 4. The human being's ultimate battle is not only between good and evil, but between the divine, selfless purpose and God-oriented soul and the natural, self-centered soul. This is a battle over who we are, how we define ourselves, and it is ever present. 5. Throughout this course, we will demonstrate that living with a divine soul paradigm is the solution to negative emotions and the key to experiencing positive emotions. 6. Sometimes we can't capitalize on positive emotions available to us because we feel hypocritical, drawn in polar opposite directions, the Impostor Syndrome. This is countered by the realization that we have 2 soul identities, and that any sacred, selfless act that we do is an authentic expression of our divine soul.
So the next lesson will be addressing shame, inadequacy, frustration, wrestling perpetually with character flaws. That's next Wednesday night. If you haven't yet registered for the course, we encourage you, please, to do so tonight with Ashley at the front door so we can have the textbooks ready for you for next week in time. It takes a good few days to get them here. But I want also to encourage everybody, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, feel free to talk to me now or to send me an email to rabbi@jewishgardens.com. I would love to hear from you and engage with you in conversation, rabbi@jewishgardens.com, or feel free to speak to me now. But I want to thank you for joining me here tonight, and I'm really excited and looking forward to doing this journey together with you. Thank you.